Hi, guys. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to be here and to talk to you about the next topic of the 5 laps that you should run before considering IVF. Now, the goal here is for me to really educate you and to help you understand that it's way, 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 way more important to invest into understanding why you're not getting pregnant instead of into a procedure. Typically, a procedure is much more invasive on the body, even if it's not, full-on IVF, IUIs, medication. That's all things that are starting to manipulate and force the body into ovulation or making sure that the pregnancy is sustained. And sometimes you still need those things. Okay. So I'm not saying that you don't need an intervention, but what I am seeing happening after speaking with many, many of you is that you're not getting any answers and you're just being pushed into some sort of a treatment without really getting an explanation as to why your body is not getting pregnant or sustaining that pregnancy. And what I want to show you through these live videos, the series that we're doing right now on labs, is that there's very many different ways that we can look into the body to help us understand why the natural process of pregnancy isn't happening or why you're not able to carry to term. The body is very, very smart and it has this innate wisdom. So when you're sitting in front of your doctor or you're searching through Google or whatever, and you're trying to figure out what's going on, I think it's really important for you to know that that little voice that's telling you to do that, that's keeping you searching and up at night, is really good. We want to celebrate that. You're trying to advocate for your health. And the goal here is to give you some more direction to go towards. So you're not grasping at straws. You're not just trying anything and everything. And that if we spend some time and energy figuring out the why, the treatment, whatever the treatment you choose, is going to go much smoother. And there's a lot more predictability than we think. And so today we're going to talk about hormones. And this is what I'm referring to, the 5 labs you should run before considering IVF. So if you are new and you have not had a chance to download this yet and you would like this freebie, go ahead and comment labs and I will make sure to get this to you. This is jam-packed with information of the labs that you should run. And last week we talked about the gut function test. So you can go back to last week's guide and watch that. And then this week, we're going to talk about the hormone panel and how there's different things that we can run. So believe it or not, the gut function test is one of the most important things because you cannot have an impact on your hormones without having a properly functioning gut. So gut function test is like understanding how well your gut is working is super, super important. But the next component is this full hormone panel. And the crazy thing is a lot of my patients that come to me, some of them have had a lot of different testing done. Most of them have had, but they haven't had a full hormone analysis. Okay. Even if they've been struggling with recurrent pregnancy loss or they can't get pregnant, sometimes it's you have to try for a certain period of time before you can get this assessment. And the truth is, you don't have to try for any amount of time. You don't have to go through any level of pain, but it is likely that you're going to have to pay out of pocket. And the reason that I say this is a lot of people rely on insurance, and insurance is great for when we are had a car accident, for when there's an emergency. Insurance isn't great for healthcare. Okay. And so when we look at fertility as your overall health, then it's going to be really hard for insurance companies to say, yeah, you totally should do all of these tests. So what I'm presenting to you is it might be covered by insurance companies. It might not be, but I really want you guys to switch this perspective to say, I deserve to know what's going on. I deserve to figure out what's happening with my body so I can stop spending money on supplements that I'm not sure are working, so I can have an actual plan for things that are going to work and change my lifestyle and my diet accordingly to what I see based on data. Not based on how you feel, not based on what you heard a celebrity do, not based on what you heard your friend did. It's literally based on your own data. So it's really, really important. And what I'm going to do today is just share a couple of the labs from my patients that that is very clear as to why they've had issues getting pregnant, or when we're assessing them before they're about to start trying, 3 to 6 months beforehand. What we can do is we can see what their fertility journey is going to look like, and we can actually see why they're experiencing some of the symptoms. So let's dive right in and let's see if, here we go. So first patient right off the bat here, I'm actually going to see, because I think it's starting it from the end for me. Cool. So this is a patient, 38, struggling to get pregnant for the first one. And then we got her pregnant on the first one after doing some assessment. And this is her getting ready for her second pregnancy. So she wanted to be proactive. They knew they wanted to have another child. She's in her late 30s. He's in his mid 40s. So they wanted to be more proactive. They didn't want to struggle to get pregnant for their second one. And so when we ran this test, so when we're looking at these tests, this is a urine metabolite test. It's by Precision Analytical, a Dutch panel. It's one of my favorites that I use. But when we're running these tests, the urine analysis is looking at long term, so how you're metabolizing your hormones, whereas blood is going to show you what's happening this moment in time. So blood is obviously going to be really important to measure as well. And most people do have their blood levels measured, maybe not of all of these hormones, but also we want to make sure that we're measuring hormones at a specific time in the cycle. So estrogen, FSH, LH, all those things need to be tested on day 3, whereas progesterone should be tested on, they'll say day 21, but it's not really day 21. It's 7 days post ovulation. And what I teach, if you go back to the menstrual cycle 101 conversation that I had on how to track your cycle, I call it peak +7. So on the peak day of your cervical fluid discharge, you count 7 days, and that's when you want to do the test. That's going to give us the most accurate representation of what's happening with the progesterone. So here we see that testosterone level is pretty low. Low testosterones, you're going to start to notice low libido, but the testosterone is really actually important to improve the quality of the egg. We want a good level, robust level of testosterone to help drive that energy towards the follicle to create a lot of nutrients and growth for that follicle. And then we also see that progesterone is on the lower side. So if this patient did it right on that 7-day post-peak of ovulation, we see that, hey, carrying a miscarriage is something that's possible here because that progesterone is on the low side. So we need to work on increasing it. And like I said, of course, we're going to confirm things with the blood, but it's good to see things long term. And then when we look at the estrogen and how it's being metabolized, so we have 3 estrogens, and basically you want to make sure that you're pushing estrogen towards a more protective pathway versus a more carcinogenic pathway. So there is the red one is, this is the enzyme, that drives it towards a more carcinogenic type of estrogen, which basically is responsible for things like breast cancer, cervical cancer, any estrogen-driven cancers. So we can see this through these lab tests, and you can see that this patient is a little bit on the higher side. And so it means we need to work on metabolizing estrogen into a more protective estrogen, because like I said, there's different types. And then when we see this methylation is low, it's usually a sign that the liver function, specifically phase 1, and there's phase 1, phase 2, is a little bit sluggish, right? And so it's knowing what foods to support and what supplements to support in order to make sure that you're getting what you need for optimal hormone function. Okay, and this is the same patient. You see that the melatonin is good, but something that I want to bring your guys' attention to, and what I really love about this test, is that it tests your adrenal function, right? It tests your hormone function in terms of your cortisol. And what we're seeing here is that the total cortisol production isn't bad. Okay, so we have cortisol that's being produced, but it's not being metabolized. So you're producing cortisol, and here's you can see the saliva cortisol here. You're producing the cortisol, but it's not metabolizing. And when it's not being metabolized, it's usually a sluggish liver. It could be a hypothyroid issue. Okay, it could be an inflammation or blood sugar dysregulation. And so then you look in the past and liver, and so you're using other tests to confirm. But basically, when we see this, that it's not metabolized very well, it typically means that that cortisol is sitting around in the tissue much longer than it should, and the person will experience that stress for longer than it should. It's going to make them more tired. It's going to, change how they're metabolizing their sugar. It's going to cause more. It's hanging around for way longer than it should. And like I said, there's all these little things that we can start to look at and understand, what is the body trying to tell us? Okay, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're really trying to figure out, is what is the body trying to tell us? Why is it not allowing us to get pregnant or to stay pregnant? Now, the next patient, this is the next patient now. Same patient. And this is the same photo, so we need to go back the other way. Here we go. This is the different patient. This is someone who is being proactive in terms of their pregnancy. So they've had some autoimmune conditions, they've had some thyroid conditions, and wanted to basically get ahead. And then there's some symptoms around ovulation in the menstrual cycle, like a lot of PMS symptoms. And basically, we start to look again. DHEA, you see that production of cortisol is actually low, so we need to support cortisol production. Here's the thing, you guys, we've all have a tremendous amount of stress in our lives all the time, and the goal is to understand how your body is responding to that stress and how do you support it during a stressful time. So are you producing too much cortisol? Are you not producing enough? Are you not metabolizing your cortisol? Because doing this, I heard this was good for my adrenal glands, and then you taking that supplement, for 50% of the people, it's going to work. For the other 50%, it isn't. Why? Because for some of us, if I'm experiencing fatigue, my fatigue could be because my cortisol is really, really high, or it could be because my cortisol has crashed. And so it's understanding, or it's dysregulated and it's off on the wrong time. The circadian rhythm is off. So it's really understanding what is going on in your body. So then you can stop patching up using, whether it's supplements or lifestyle things or whatever. You have that connection, you have that data, you have that understanding of what you need to do. And then of course, you're going to feel much better, much faster, because you're doing something that's very specific to you, as opposed to a general blank statement. Don't get me wrong. General things like you need to sleep well, you need to eat high quality foods, you need to move your body. Those things are still true. It's just we can even further tweak those based on what we see on the test. Okay. So that's really important for you to understand. And the things that we're seeing here that I see right away is that total DHEA is on the low side. So if someone is in their early 30s and they have a DHEA of 978, it should really be much higher up. And so that DHEA is also going to play a really big role in the quality of the egg. Lots of studies showing that we can take DHEA at a low dose 3 months prior to getting pregnant to help increase the quality of the egg. Because again, DHEA is going to go into our progesterone, testosterone. It's a building block. So the next, this is the same person. Now, what we're seeing here and why she's experiencing some of the symptoms that she is with her PMS is basically you're seeing progesterone that's really high, but the alpha is really known for moodiness. Okay. So a lot of moodiness and just kind of like body, the breast tenderness, all that jazz, but the mood is a really big one. So we can take things to help bring this guy down and decrease it, right? Decrease the 5-alpha. The other component is she was getting some shooting and stabbing pains, and she's pushing. You could see that there's a lot of blue. The blue is a proliferative type of estrogen, means so if you have a lot of fibroids, if you have a lot of like fibrocystic breasts, a lot of tough, dense tissue, it's likely that you're pushing a lot into this E3 pathway. Now, E3 is going to be more elevated during pregnancy just because you are proliferating, you're multiplying. She wasn't pregnant, but she was getting a lot of shooting pain. So endometriosis, think about endometriosis, E3 is going to be high. And so again, we're seeing low methylation here. So the liver needs some support. The red is okay, but really we need to increase this pathway as much as we can to decrease the pain. And sure enough, of course, she did. That was again through food and supplements to help support that estrogen production, the way that she was breaking down her estrogen to make sure that it wasn't going in that E3 pathway and causing her a lot of pain. And now this is last one that I'm going to share with you is multiple miscarriages, okay? Recurrent miscarriage loss. And so again, 32, I believe, year old female, so early 30s. But the big things that I start to look at right away is look at this progesterone, right? So this is when progesterone should be at its highest because you just ovulated. And of course, you are expecting to the level of progesterone here is what's going to carry you through the pregnancy. So having low progesterone right away, we know that there's something you're predisposed to a miscarriage. Of course, we're also, like I said, we're confirming this through blood work as well. But the question is going to be even deeper, understanding why the progesterone is low. We also see the DHEA is low, right? Even lower than the one that we saw. So we're thinking that the cortisol production, the quality of the egg is probably not as high, as good as it can be. And it's might be causing some of the low hormones. And then we're not metabolizing that cortisol. So we have good levels of cortisol, right? We're producing good levels, but it's not being metabolized. So again, we're going to look at the liver, we're going to look at the thyroid, because those are all things that help increase our metabolism. We're also going to look at inflammation, and we're going to look at blood sugars. If you look at the daily pattern, you see that it's quite high at nighttime, much higher than it should be. So this person is feeling sluggish in the morning and having a hard time winding down at nighttime, and her sleep is impacted, even though she didn't think it was until we threw some tracking device on her. That was very, very evident that her sleep was impacted. And then the other component that this test that I really like, because it helps us to really see what else is going on, is kind of our nutrient levels. So when you look into things like B6 is really important for hormone health and also tells us if there's a lot of inflammation, and both of these markers are out of range. So we know that hormones need some support and there's probably inflammation. Glutathione is a really strong antioxidant. So what do we need for high quality eggs? We need really good antioxidants, right? Why do people take CoQ10? Because it's a strong antioxidant, but just know that CoQ10 is only one of the antioxidants, and it really comes down to what is it that you need. And so when we have that low range, we know that there's some support. Dopamine and norepinephrine, those are your adrenaline. Dopamine is your feel good button. That's the thing that keeps us scrolling, the things that keeps us shopping or eating that food without being able to stop. So when it's on the lower range, it's going to be harder for you to find motivation to do things. So I find that there's a lot that's related to the gut here as well. And norepinephrine, epinephrine, that's our fight or flight. So when we see it in the low range, it's usually we're starting to burn out, right? And then melatonin is low. So when melatonin is low, it's a hormone, it's a circadian rhythm hormone. It's going to impact basically ovulation, anything that acts on the circadian rhythm. So again, melatonin is usually at the bottom of, production. And so when that starts to go, you're always traveling up the chain to see what's causing that melatonin to be low. And this is why the handout is not which is the one lab test that you should run before considering IVF, or if you really want to figure out what's happening, why you're not getting pregnant or staying pregnant, because there isn't one single test that's going to tell you all of the information. The goal is to run a bunch of tests that are going to fill in the gaps and fill in the whole puzzle so we can see this bigger picture, as opposed to, oh, my doctors just ran blood work and they might have done every single blood work panel under the sun and still say that, well, some things are off and some things are not. But blood typically doesn't tell us why things are going on. It tells us what's happening. Now, it's, not necessarily true for all of the types of blood works, but typically what I see is the measurement of just what's happening, not why it's happening. And so when we're running some of these deeper tests to help us understand how our body is metabolizing certain things and what nutrients and vitamins it needs, or how it's absorbing the food, we get deeper answers. And that's really what it's about, is getting answers. So we can stop spinning our wheels. We can stop, feeling powerless and hopeless and desperate, but get some tools in our hands that tells us exactly what's happening and what we can do to fix it. Okay. I would love for you to comment and let me know what was the most insightful thing that you learned from this video. If you want the freebie of the 5 labs that you should consider running before considering IVF, that you should run before considering IVF, just comment the word labs and we'll make sure to get that to you. Thanks so much for being here. Until next week.